Good evening and welcome to World Today. I'm Amrit Pal Singh. This is a show in which we tell you what happened around the world. This is your daily window to the world. On the show this evening, we'll talk about how the situation in Afghanistan is shaping up after the US has withdrawn from Afghanistan. In fact, its last soldier left early this morning, and also the Indian have established contact with the Taliban, though there were talks with the Taliban previously, but this is the first time that the government is acknowledging that we are talking to the Taliban, and the situation, especially the safety of the stranded Indians and those Afghans who wish to come to India, was discussed. And also it was discussed that how Afghanistan soil should not be used for terror activities against India, and the Taliban has assured India that India's concerns will be addressed positively. We'll talk about this and much more over the next an hour and a half. Let's begin with the big news we're tracking at this hour. Afghanistan wakes to a new era under Taliban after US completes its withdrawal. Major General Chris Donahue is the last American soldier to lead Afghanistan after 20 years of its military presence. US shifts its Afghani diplomatic mission to Qatar. Prime Minister Narendra Modi directs high-level group consisting of the External Affairs Minister, the National Security Advisor and other senior officials to focus on immediate priorities of India and Afghanistan, issues pertaining to the safe return of stranded Indians, travel of Afghan nationals to India being prioritized. The groups to ensure that the Afghan territory is not used in any manner for terrorism directed against India. Hurricane Ida leaves behind a trail of destruction in Louisiana, knocks out power to over 1 million houses, around 113,000 houses in Mississippi left without power. 9/11 services largely disrupted in New Orleans. US President Biden says working to assess full extent of damage. Indian Paralympians continue to shine in Tokyo. Singraj Adana wins bronze medal in the men's 10-meter air pistol SH1 event. With this, India gets its best ever medal haul of 8 in the Paralympics. And in a thrilling start to the US Open, Andy Murray loses to Stefanos Tsitsipas. Second sees Daniel Medvedev sails to second round. Defending champion Naomi Osaka clinches a straight set victory. And let's begin with news from Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, the situation in Afghanistan is evolving. The last American military presence, the withdrawal was completed as the last soldier left this morning. The Taliban have celebrated that with gunfire.
And this marks the end of 20 years of war. After 20 years of war, the Taliban has returned to a position of control in Afghanistan. Major General Chris Donahue, commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, stepped onto a C-17 transport plane on August 30, the last US service member to leave the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul, Afghanistan. Final flights transporting the last US troops took off a minute before midnight, marking the completion of the US pullout that ended America's longest war. Washington and its NATO allies carried out a massive and chaotic evacuation over the past 2 weeks. There are many still left behind. These tens of thousands of stranded Afghans helped Western countries and might have qualified for evacuation, but their hopes have died.
I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the end of the military mission to evacuate American citizens, third country nationals, and vulnerable Afghans. Tonight's withdrawal signifies both the end of the military component of the evacuation, but also the end of the nearly 20-year mission that began in Afghanistan shortly after September 11th, 2001. Look, there's a lot of heartbreak associated with this departure. We did not get everybody out that we wanted to get out, but I think if we'd stayed another 10 days, Louis, we wouldn't have gotten everybody out that we wanted to get out.
Celebratory gunfire echoed across Kabul before dawn after the last US troops took off from the airport, ending 20 years of war in Afghanistan that left the Taliban stronger than it was in 2001. Following the withdrawal of the final foreign troops, Taliban fighters took control of the airport before dawn on Tuesday. Fireworks and tracer bullets lit up the night sky in Kabul after final flights departed from the Hamid Karzai International Airport, with one of the aircraft deploying flares as it took off. Blinken said the US will engage with the Taliban government if it is in our vital national interest.
Now, US military flights have ended, and our troops have departed Afghanistan. A new chapter of America's engagement with Afghanistan has begun. It's one in which we will lead with our diplomacy. The military mission is over. A new diplomatic mission has begun.
The United States Security Council has meanwhile, under the current presidency of India, adopted a resolution on the situation in Afghanistan demanding that the war-torn country not be used to threaten or attack any nation or shelter terrorists. In an emergency meeting, the UN Security Council called on the Taliban to honor its commitment to allow Afghans and foreign nationals to leave the country.
As Afghanistan enters the next chapter, it is imperative that the international community remain unified and resolute, including in holding the Taliban accountable for its commitments. One such commitment which the Taliban has made publicly and privately is that those who wish to leave Afghanistan will be able to do so. Today's resolution signals just how seriously the Security Council takes that commitment, along with the commitments to allow humanitarian aid to flow and prevent terrorism.
Foreign Secretary Shringla chaired the UNSC meet under the Indian presidency. He said the resolution is a very positive development and it especially supports women and minorities.
This resolution also highlights the importance of upholding human rights, in particular in the case of women, children, and minorities. India has always provided a very strong support to minority communities in Afghanistan, in particular the Sikh and Hindu minority communities. And it is an important part of our effort to try and bring those Afghan nationals, including minorities, who want to leave Afghanistan and evacuate them. And I think the resolution, in that sense, has indicated a need for developing a safe zone for the passage of travelers in and out of Kabul airport, which is indeed a very positive development.
The UN Refugee Agency UNHCR appealed on Monday for funding towards a $1.3 billion humanitarian response plan set for use inside Afghanistan. Deputy UN High Commissioner for Refugees Kelly Clements issued the request during a visit to the Jordanian capital Amman. Clements said that a total of 3.4 million people were internally displaced inside Afghanistan, 120,000 of which in July 2021 alone, placing the humanitarian situation inside the country as a priority. UNHCR has also issued a response plan for refugee hosting countries for both response and contingency planning of almost $300 million. A WHO plane carrying 12.5 metric tons of supplies landed in Afghanistan.
This is the first shipment of medical supplies to land in the country since the Taliban took control. 12.5 metric tons of supplies are enough to cover the basic health needs of more than 200,000 people, as well as provide 3,500 surgical procedures and treat 6,500 trauma patients. They will be immediately delivered to 40 health facilities in 29 provinces across Afghanistan. Our friends in Rome at the UN Food and Agriculture Organization also said that food production and agricultural livelihoods are under extreme pressure in Afghanistan. FAO warned that if we fail to assist the people most impacted by acute drought, large numbers will be forced to abandon their farms and be displaced in certain areas.
The 20-year conflict took the lives of nearly 2,500 US troops and an estimated 240,000 Afghans and cost some $2 trillion. All eyes are on the Taliban-led government in Afghanistan. Will they keep their promises or not? Remains to be seen. World Today Desk, DD India.
And in view of the evolving situation in Afghanistan, Prime Minister has directed that a high-level group comprising of the External Affairs Minister, the National Security Advisor and senior officials will focus on immediate priorities of India and Afghanistan. The group has been meeting regularly over the past few days. It is seized of issues pertaining to the safe return of stranded Indians, the travel of Afghan nationals to India. The group shall ensure that the territory of Afghanistan is not used in any manner for terrorism directed against India. The group has also been monitoring the ground situation in Afghanistan and the international response to it, including the UN Security Council resolution passed this morning by the Security Council. Over 10 civilians, including 6 children, were killed in a US airstrike targeting a suspected ISIS-K vehicle in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. Relatives of the victims demand justice after US strike killed multiple family members. More in this report.
Meet the surviving relative of a family whose 10 members, including 6 children, were killed in a US drone strike targeting a suicide bomber.
I lost my brother, my brother's 3 sons, my own daughter, and 4 of my nephews. It happened at around 4:30 in the afternoon.
The US Central Command spokesman said that it conducted what it called a defensive airstrike in Kabul, targeting a suspected ISIS-K suicide bomber who posed an imminent threat to the airport, referring to a local affiliate of the Islamic State in Afghanistan.
If you were extremist, you would not have worked for foreign organizations. I worked for foreign organizations for 4 years. My brother worked for them for 17 years, and one of my nephews worked for the American organization in Herat for 6 years.
And now they demand justice.
We cannot even find the bodies at the scene of the strike. We want justice. The American military must hear our voices and never do this again.
This was the second US military strike in Afghanistan since a suicide bombing outside Kabul airport on Thursday killed 13 US service members and some 170 Afghans. ISIS-K claimed responsibility for the attack. The US military on Friday launched a drone strike against the terror group in eastern Afghanistan's Nangarhar province, which killed 2 high-profile members and wounded another, according to the Pentagon. World Today Desk, DD India.
So how did this 20-year war in Afghanistan go, and as the US completes its military exit from there, its military withdrawal from there, though it says some US nationals are still there and some Afghans which it will try and get back from Afghanistan to the United States in the coming days. Let's take a look at the timeline of how these 20 years panned out. Well, it all began on September 11, 2001, what's called 9/11. The Al-Qaeda brought down the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York, and it all started there. On September 18th of the same year, the Taliban government in Afghanistan, the Taliban was then in power there, refused to hand over Osama bin Laden and other Al-Qaeda leadership associated with the 9/11 attacks to the United States. It was on October 7th in 2001 that American and British forces jointly attacked Afghanistan, which was under Taliban. In November the same year, Taliban forces began to crumble. It was less than a month they began to crumble and retreat from their strongholds across Afghanistan, including from Kabul. It was in December the same year Taliban's surrender is said to have been complete. Mullah Omar fled Kandahar, where he was, and the interim Afghan government was sworn in. In 2003, the then US Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld announced that to end major combat operations in Afghanistan. At that time there were about 8,000 US troops in Afghanistan. In October 2004, the first elections were held since the Taliban. 80% of the Afghanis voted, of their voting population, cast their ballot for Hamid Karzai, and Hamid Karzai becomes the president of the country. It was in 2005 that the gradual resurgence of Taliban started again, with Taliban with violence increasing across the country, Taliban using IED blasts to target various parts of the country. It was in 2009 that then US President Barack Obama announced that he's increasing military presence in Afghanistan to 68,000 US troops on the boots on the ground. And in November 2009, Hamid Karzai was sworn in as president for another term following an election which was marred by fraud allegations. And it was in 2010 that the number of American war deaths crossed the 1,000 mark in Afghanistan. In November 2010, NATO members signed a declaration stating that they would hand over the responsibility for maintaining peace and security to Afghan security forces by the end of 2014. Again in 2011, on May 1st, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed by the American forces in Abbottabad in Pakistan. It was in June of that year that the then President Barack Obama announced to withdraw 30,000 troops by 2012. And in 2013, NATO handed over control of the security to Afghan forces. The coalition forces focused on military training and counterterrorism in the region. The Taliban and the US start talking to each other in Doha in Qatar. And in September of 2013, Ashraf Ghani was elected the president of Afghanistan. On the 28th of December in 2013, US and NATO formally ended their combat mission in Afghanistan. In 2017, the United States dropped a massive GBU-43 bomb, which is dubbed as the mother of all bombs in eastern Afghanistan. In 2019, the US ramped up peace negotiations with the Taliban in Doha. Taliban promised to block internal terrorist groups from Afghanistan in exchange for US withdrawing its troops. It was last year in 2020 that the US and Taliban signed an agreement paving the way for foreign troops to be significantly withdrawn from Afghanistan. On April 14 this year, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, announced that US forces will withdraw unconditionally by the 11th of September. But on July 2nd this year, US troops abruptly pulled out of their main base at the Bagram airfield, which is about 60 kilometers north of Kabul. Well, on August 15th this year, that's last month, Taliban seizes Kabul, Ashraf Ghani flees the country, the United States and Western allies launch an urgent airlift from Kabul to bring out their own citizens. Actually not last month, this month, just 15 days back, and tens of thousands of Afghans who aided them. And on 26th of August of this month, Islamic State launched a suicide bomb attack on the crowded gates of Kabul airport, killing scores of civilians and 13 US troops. On the 30th of August, that's yesterday, US General Frank McKenzie announced the completion of the US troop withdrawal. Now that's where General Donahoe's picture was released, he becoming the last soldier, signifying the US leaving Afghanistan after a 20-year war. Well, in an interesting development, on Tuesday, that's today, Ambassador of India to Qatar, Deepak Mittal, met with Sher Mohammad Abbas Stanekzai, the head of Taliban's political office in Doha. The meeting took place at the Indian Embassy. Apparently, the Taliban had requested it. The two sides discussed the safety and security of and the early return of Indian nationals stranded in Afghanistan, and also the travel of Afghan nationals, especially the minorities who wish to visit India, also came up in the discussions between Ambassador Mittal and Sher Mohammad Stanikzai. Mittal raised India's concern that Afghanistan soil should not be used for anti-India activities and terrorism in any manner. The Taliban representative has assured the Indian ambassador that these issues will be positively addressed. And to talk more about that, I am joined by my colleague Ravi Dhiman, and also I am joined by Amar Sinha, our former ambassador to Afghanistan. Also I am joined by, let me first go across to my colleague Ravi Dhiman first. Ravi, what do you make of this meeting, very important meeting between the Taliban representative of their political office in Doha, Sher Mohammad Stanikzai, and Ambassador Deepak Mittal, the Indian ambassador there? We've spoke about the two essential concerns that the Indians have had about, one, the return of the Indians who are still stranded in Afghanistan, and also of those Afghans who wish to come back, and the second and perhaps equally or even perhaps more important, that this Afghan soil should not be used to direct terror attacks against India. Taliban has assured India that it will look positively at that. What does the Taliban mean by looking positively at these demands? Could we consider it a cast in iron assurance that the Afghan territory under the Taliban shall not be allowed to cause mayhem or launch terror attacks in India?
Well, that's a very long shot, Amrit, because right now we have to go step by step. We have to really see how Taliban comes good on its promises that it has made over the past couple of weeks to the international community. This meeting, which we just apprised our viewers with in Doha, is important because it signifies that India has finally made a contact with Taliban through a proper diplomatic channel. That's important because there are many Indian citizens who are still stuck in Kabul and other cities of Afghanistan. They have to be brought back safely. And also the minority communities of Afghanistan, for which India has said that if they want to come to India, they should be allowed to leave Pakistan. So this is the priority number one for the Indian government right now, to get back its citizens, the Indian nationals who are in Afghanistan, safely back to India. Now that the international airport is not in control of the US forces any longer, India had to open up a diplomatic channel with the Taliban, which is in control of Kabul and the international airport. And this step is, we can take it in a positive way, that this is the first step in engaging the Taliban to at least ensure that Indian nationals from Afghanistan are allowed a safe exit by the regime there, along with the minorities who want to come to India. Next is what the point you emphasized on, that Afghanistan should not be used as a terror launching pad for activities against India. That point has also been raised in this meeting, and the Taliban has said that they will look into it positively. Right now, the basic focus of the Taliban regime, according to many experts, is to ensure that they present to the world a face and a Taliban which is in a stark contrast with Taliban 1.0, which was associated with brutal regime and a strict compliance of the Sharia laws. They want to present a more malleable face to the world, and the reason for that presumably is that all the funds have dried up. The funds which were there in Afghan Central Bank have been frozen, and all the funds that were coming from Bretton Woods institutions, including the World Bank and the IMF, have long dried up. So Afghanistan, in order to kickstart the economy, they need the funds desperately. Around half of the Afghanistan is experiencing hunger pangs right now, according to many reports of the United Nations organizations, and unemployment is rampant. The economy is in a downward spiral, and for the country to grow up, for the country to stand on its feet, the Taliban leaders also understand that funding is important. So this is an exercise which they are making, and how honestly they are making, and will they stand up to their promises? We'll get to know in coming months and weeks. But for India, it was important to open up a diplomatic channel with the Taliban to ensure safety of its citizens, and that's exactly what has been done today.
And also, Ravi, apart from taking assurances of, say, the return of the Indian nationals and also not allowing Afghanistan for conducting anti-India activities, especially terrorism, the other would be the developmental projects in which India's already invested. Now what happens to that? Also, the Taliban have in the past also made the noises saying that, well, if India wants to partner in the development of Afghanistan, it is more than welcome to come and do that. Now, as you say, the Taliban needs the funds. If India plays its cards right and doesn't step on how the Taliban run the internal affairs of Afghanistan, could they be more amenable to letting India be and not allowing their forces to be used against Indian interests?
Well, that's a two-way road actually. India has been extensively investing in Afghanistan. India has funded major projects which over the years have resulted in major economic, social gains for the people of Afghanistan. But for India to continue the funding, if India continues with the project, that means India continues to get to be involved in the development of Afghanistan. That has to be a two-way road. India has to be convinced that its interest will be taken care of, that Afghanistan will no longer be used as a launching pad or a breeding ground for terrorists who then are recruited by the terror organizations across the border and sent to Kashmir. These assurances will take time. India will obviously fully satisfy itself before committing any more funds and any more engagement inside Taliban. But as I said, it's a step-by-step process. India will first see whether Taliban holds its promises and it comes true to its promises, and then only India can commit more funding, more engagement to many developmental activities in Afghanistan. Indian intention has never been in doubt. The Taliban leaders also know that. So this is a major plus point for India. And as you said, Taliban is in dire need of funds. They need funds to kickstart the economy, and the Indian infrastructure projects are, many are just nearing completion. Many are critical projects to kickstart the economy, and the Taliban leaders also know their importance. So we'll have to see how the ball rolls in the next few weeks, and then India can perhaps take a concerted decision.
Ravi, let's assume that their intention does change, that they believe that, okay, let India be, let's take the money, let them be involved in our developmental projects. But what do they do with their umbilical cord? The Haqqani network plays a very important role, and we know the sort of influence the ISI exerts over the Haqqani network, and then Haqqani network shapes or would shape the policies of the Taliban. Now, how would that play out?
Well, that's true. That's why I said we'll have to see how Taliban holds its word of not allowing Afghanistan to become a breeding ground for terrorists, not giving any terror organizations a launching pad to recruit more people from Afghanistan. And not only for India, the entire world is watching Taliban with very keenly and with sharp eyes, with sharp focus on what the Taliban does. As you said, the Haqqani network has been at the forefront of all the terror attacks in Afghanistan, which have resulted in casualties of American soldiers also. It is a designated UN terrorist organization, and now it is in charge of the defense of Kabul. So Taliban will have to walk the talk. It will have to prove that it is indeed a changed Taliban, and it is indeed willing to make some changes in order to engage the world leaders, engage the world nations, and it will have to show, as I said, it will have to walk the talk, it will have to show its intention in its actions.
Absolutely, that's a precarious situation, and one will have to see how, I think India would be waiting and watching that how Taliban lives up to its word, and that will only time will tell if they do. Ravi Dhiman, many thanks for joining us for the moment and giving us that update. So, will things work out, but at least the first step has been taken. A diplomatic contact has been established. A diplomatic contact, India was in talks with the Taliban, but this is the first time that India is officially acknowledging any kind of diplomatic contact. And if the Taliban do indeed say, come clean on what they promised and do live by the commitments of addressing India's concerns positively, that would augur well for the two countries. We'll talk about that. I have with me to join me on that, I have with me Amar Sinha. He's a former ambassador to Afghanistan, and also I have with me Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, former DGMO. He's the director of St. George in Delhi now. Both gentlemen, many thanks for joining in. First to you, Ambassador. What do you make of this diplomatic contact with the Taliban? What should we make of it? And secondly, does this augur that India, if India is testing the Taliban, if the Taliban does come true to its word, India could also look at some sort of diplomatic engagement with the Taliban?
Well, yes. First thing is that I think this engagement, which the government has publicly acknowledged, brings out the outreach out from the parda where it was. And I think that's a good first step. Obviously, this is still not a step towards diplomatic recognition or recognizing them, because as you rightly said, that we have to test and we have to be patient. We have to help Taliban transition. You see, till now, it was treated as a terror group. From there, it evolved into some sort of a government in exile when legitimacy was granted to his Doha office. Today, they have come to power. Obviously, they have used methods which can only be categorized as terrorist methods. You can call it a coup, an armed rebellion, whatever. But basically, they have unseated elected government. So they have to first prove their own credentials and acceptability domestically. How they treat their own people is the key test. Whether there will be reprisals, how they treat the minorities, the women, the youth, and the political opposition, which ran Afghanistan for 20 years. There are signs that they are trying to bring up inclusive government. So I think that will be the first. Second priority, of course, is the security of our people who are still there. The Indian origin people who still want to come out, they are friends of India there. And obviously it is a great concern to the government of India that they don't come to harm. Then the third that you mentioned, that the Afghan soil is not used against anti-Indian activities. Now that is a tougher call, but that is, I think, absolutely key. And Taliban will have to do two things in that, I think. First, reassert control over its full territory, make sure that the groups that they fought with them in unseating the Ghani government are put back into their places or asked to leave. And third, that it shows that they're evolving into a nationalist Afghan government and not remain a proxy as it was seen for the last 20 years. And I think only when these things will happen, Government of India will move towards diplomatic recognition. But immediately I feel that we also need to have people-centric Afghan policy. We are staring at a humanitarian crisis, a food crisis, and there we should be ready to step in very quickly to help the Afghan people who desperately need assistance right now.
Okay.
Over to you.
Okay. General Bhatia, let me bring you in here. Assuming that India, now that India has put its concerns to the Taliban's spokesperson, Senexai, he was educated at our IMA here, the 1982 batch. We've had contacts with him previously. He may be the more amenable man to talk to, but what about, the huge cadres that they have? Now that the war may be over, where will they go? Will the Taliban, how easy or difficult is it for Taliban to rein in those people and actually actually not allow them to go on what they consider their sacred duty about, ensuring justice for people who are perceived to suffer injustices, because they've been brought on that staple right.
I think you hit the nail on the head. The key issue, the key question is, it's Taliban 2.0, not the leadership, but the Taliban cadres. They have learned to rule with the gun. It's a victory for Taliban. And now, how do they control the cadres? It's not an organization which is structured. It's an organization which is rules, and they lead the rule of the gun. And that is where the challenge lies. Yes, we have an opening in. He was trained at the IMA in 1982. I was a instructor that time. Of course, I was not directly involved in this training. But the fact is that we have invested very well, like Mr. Amarsenna said, we invested well in the people of Afghanistan. Our projects have been good. So we'll have to look at Taliban in two different ways. One is deal with the leadership, and second, see and watch how the Taliban cadres behave. Because there are certain assurances, we need to look after our interests. They will take on the principled stance and they think of as options which derive from opportunity situations. Situations are very complex in Afghanistan and Kabul. We need to get our people out, we need to protect our interests, we need to project our interests, and we need to guard our states and citizens. So that is where the challenge lies. What do the Taliban cadres do? And they're 80 foreign cadres, and the United States, they're going to 6 lakh small arms. So where do the arms go? Are this not only Taliban, there are many other, like you said, Haqqani network, there's TTP, there's Jaish, there's LET, there were one of ISIS caves there. So there are a lot of terrorist groups. Each terrorist group got its own agenda. They want their own loyalties. And Afghanistan, in any case, has loyalty towards the tribes, there are warlords. So situation, I think, is very complex as far as security situation is concerned. However, India has done well to reach out to Taliban. I am with them. We should not, we have to deal with, in case the government comes in, we have to deal with the government. And Taliban is looking at India, because India gives legitimacy to Taliban. I think Taliban will, the world will follow India. We told India is listen far, we are responsible far. So what we are looking at is what we do. We have a wait and watch policy over the last 2 weeks. We've seen what has transpired, and now we reach out officially in a diplomatic manner, a very good move. We reach out to the Taliban leadership in Doha. So let's take it forward from here. And we also put on the last day of the United Nations, and as per the UN, they have stopped calling Taliban a terrorist organization. They're Taliban. But there are other terrorist organizations, and we do also have the enemy of the which is Pakistan. We have to look at what Pakistan does there, because there is certain control, certain license, certain leverages which Pakistan has over the terrorist groups. And that is where I think the major challenge will be from the cadres and from the ISIL control. It is a quality control, it's not a full control, but there is some sort of a control with the cadres and with the leadership.
Ambassador Amarsenna, let me put that to you. There is, when we saw Kabul fall, we saw a certain celebratory kind of mood within the sort of experts of Pakistan, in the military establishment of Pakistan, saying, well, India's whatever strategic advantage that it may have had in Afghanistan now falls with the fleeing and the fall of the Ghani government, and now the Pakistanis can take care of their own interests, which Indians were not allowing them or were an impediment to. Now obviously Pakistan has been waiting for and investing in this game because it wants to reap strategic benefits from that, and their sheer strategic benefit they wish to see is conducting anti-India activities. Now for years, if they've been pumping money, if they've been putting military mind behind it, if they've been lying with the Americans, playing both ways but yet keeping their assets strong for this particular day. So what does it make us to believe that they will not use this opportunity for anti-India activities?
Well, if Pakistan wants to continue with that policy, obviously it would. And for that it would need a weak Kabul government, whatever may be shape and form. And it would need areas which are not governed or not in control of Afghanistan, so that they can use those back home, so to say, for their nefarious activities, which gives them an element of deniability. Because otherwise the anti-India groups are all based in Pakistan. Pakistan knows that. So yes, they have been celebrating, but it's based on an assumption that they would continue to have great leverage and control over Taliban. What they forget that it also could be a case where Taliban has effectively used Pakistan to achieve its political objectives, and today it may start looking at showing its nationalist colors and behaving like an Afghan, because there are big fissures between the Afghan nation as well as the Pakistani nation. So I don't think this is something that they can celebrate for too long. Because momentarily it helps them to make it like a one for them and zero for India, but I don't believe Afghanistan was ever an India-Pakistan match in that sense. They will have to contend with the West, which they have tried to defeat and which has gone back rather humiliated. So they would have a bigger problem on hand. It's not just having these cheap shots at celebrating victories in Kabul.
Okay. Let me bring you in General Bhatia. General Bhatia, now what should be the way forward? Should we move away from the policy that we adopted in the 90s, where we said, well, the Taliban is a proscribed organization, we do not recognize that, and then we paid the price for that? Or is it better to sort of, engage with them? Yes, Pakistan does have an influence over them more than we do through, say, the Haqqani network, or they've been brought up in the madrasas of the Haqqanis there, and they have an umbilical cord with Pakistan. But as Ambassador Sinha says, that now they may come into their own and stop taking dictation from Rawalpindi. So can we use those chinks? Can we use those spaces? Should we look at moving towards establishing diplomatic relations with them or recognizing them if they do not act inimical or show signs of not acting inimical or resisting those pressures?
I think we need to be pragmatic, and we should keep watch of the situation and opportunity for. We had little leverages vis-a-vis Pakistan, but more leverages than us. We have to understand that that's the reality on ground. But that does not mean that India is not, does not have any leverages. We have, and we can. The Taliban will look at us for support, especially for recognition. They will look at for food, medicines, and we should help them out. It's the people of Afghanistan who matter actually. The Taliban will survive for months, a few years, but then situations can change. So we have to keep investing in all factions, other factions also. And Taliban is not that taboo. We have to deal with the government in power, and its government is all inclusive. So it's a very good thing. If it's not inclusive, then we have to deal with them, because we should protect our national interests. Everyone is doing it. It's not only India. You look at the US, they've taken assurances. China has taken assurances that Taliban will not interfere with Xinjiang and with Uyghur and EDI. Iran especially, Russia again. So we have to live in a real world that is wrong realities. So I feel that we should look at Taliban the way Taliban is today, and we should deal with them we should try and help them out, and let's keep investing in the people of Afghanistan. Where Pakistan is concerned, yes, I agree with you. Pakistan has certain linkages. ISI has linkages with the terrorist groups, but Taliban can stand out his own. But even if Taliban doesn't stand out, and the epicenter, the worst case scenario, the epicenter of terrorism shifting from Pakistan to Afghanistan and giving some leeway to Pakistan to fight the FATF and to say that they have now moved out and they're in Afghanistan. But we should also understand that Pakistan is the most affected state thereafter. Violence doesn't, it is not confined to other countries. Pakistan is the most affected state. So we should deal with Taliban. I feel that we have to deal with the government in power, and the government is Taliban controlled, and let it do so.
Okay. Ambassador Amar Sinha, now that the last American soldier, so to speak, is out of Afghanistan, the Taliban wanted the 31st deadline to be sacrosanct. They've achieved that. Let me ask you the question that everybody is asking: by when could we see a government in place in Kabul, some sort of order in place? Because it's almost 2 weeks that country does not have a government.
Well, that's a million-dollar question because Taliban did say in one of their earlier statements that they would announce a government once the last troops leave. Now, that condition has been fulfilled. They had also said that their supreme leader, who has been mysteriously missing from action, Mr. Akhundzada, would come out, and he's already in Afghanistan, but he'll come out in public after the troops leave. So perhaps in the next 1 or 2 days, we should see him coming up and announcing something. Some of the essential services, I understand that some acting ministers have been put, but not really as a decision, but more of a power grab seems to be happening, where people have just occupied different ministries, and there's a lot of tug of war happening on the ground. But the municipal services, etc., they have installed people. So I don't know if that transition will be very smooth. Plus, their talk about inclusive government, that they're engaging with Dr. Abdullah and President Karzai, whether that's going to lead to something concrete, or it was just sort of engaging them as a courtesy, it's all yet to come. And I think in the next couple of days, we should have some semblance of a government taking shape, and that would reveal how united Taliban is, how much in control the leadership is, or how much concessions they have to make, even to the factions within Taliban. Forget about the others in Afghanistan political party. So that's really a million-dollar question, and all of us are waiting with bated breath that what do they unveil now.
But would they be conciliatory in their approach, even if to seek recognition, even if to bring a certain amount of, because they've been talking, as you say, to Abdullah, to Hamid Karzai, so we see people like Gulabdin Hekmatyar, Abdullah, etc., being part of, as is being talked about, some Rahbari Shura or some sort of a council, at least for the interim?
Well, different formulas have leaked out or have been floated over the last 2 years. And that was perhaps the end game that the international community also wanted. Taliban has been engaging, it has been making the right noises, but we haven't seen any result on the ground yet. But now with absolutely the casus belli itself disappearing, I think they will have to do it quickly. Otherwise, the internal contradictions will put them in a greater problem than just the departure of the Americans have solved.
Okay. Last question to you, General Bhatia. The Prime Minister has put together a group which consists of the External Affairs Minister, the NSA, and MES's senior officials of the government. They may be from different agencies, from different departments who are involved in such kind of things. What would be India's strategy, according to you, to deal with it? Because they say the group's job would be to ensure that anti-India terror activity does not take place. One, we could see what we've seen this evening, establishing some sort of a contact and telling the Taliban, well, these are our concerns. But militarily also, India would be, looking at securing itself, because by the end of it, that's the biggest defense that we have.
No, in the security domain, the main threat is spread of terrorism. And, so we'll have to look at two things. One is the proactive strategy to reach out to the leadership who can control the cadres, if not fully, to a large extent, and make sure that nothing big ever happens. And second thing is a preemptive strategy, to keep your eyes and ears open, to have things on the ground, to keep the intelligence, and to see trouble before it actually manifests in a big way. But we should also be looking at some sort of a manipulation by, like I said, the enemy of Pakistan, like the Taliban, to do something in India. And we should understand that today we are a different country. We have done voting, and the red lines are very categorically laid out, and we should reiterate our red lines. There's no harm in it. We have to protect our interests. So I do feel that we should look at a proactive and a preemptive strategy, and talk about punitive strategy too. If need be, the world is done. Not that I'm saying that we should put boots on the ground at Afghanistan. That is the strategy vendor. But we should look after interests in the sense of keeping a tab on what is likely to happen, what is going to happen, and what can happen. That's where India-centric is concerned.
All right. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Ambassador Amar Sinha, many thanks both gentlemen for joining us and sharing with us your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on, a bomb-laden drone targeted the Aba airport in southwestern Saudi Arabia, injuring 8 persons today. This is the second such strike on Aba airport over the past 24 hours. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the event of the incident. Saudi state television reported that a civilian plane too was damaged in the drone strike. The Saudi-led coalition battling Houthi rebels in neighboring Yemen said that the second attack on the airport constitutes a war crime after it intercepted a booby-trapped drone earlier in the day. In the United States, Hurricane Ida has weakened into a tropical depression, but the impact is far from over. About 71 million people are now under flash floods. The flood alerts include the metro areas of Atlanta, Nashville, Washington, Philadelphia, and New York City. Ida left a deluge of rain in Louisiana, killing at least 2 persons. Louisiana governor said that more fatalities were expected in his state.
These are the visuals of massive destruction by Hurricane Ida in United States Louisiana before it downgraded to a tropical depression and moved northwards on Monday. One of the most powerful hurricanes to hit U.S. Gulf Coast knocked out power to over 1 million houses in Louisiana and 113,000 in Mississippi. Thousands were left without water on Monday, and emergency 911 services were largely disrupted in New Orleans.
Last night was rough. We saw slow water coming in under the door, and then it progressively just got, I was mopping, and then it just progressively got worse till it was ankles, knees, almost chest level. So we just put the dogs on the counters, and then we climbed into the attic.
It was the worst thing ever. I got my baby out though. I wasn't gonna stop till I get my baby out.
U.S. President Joe Biden promised all possible help and said his administration was working with the electric sector to understand the full extent of damage.
We've been working with the electric sector throughout the night and all day today to assess and understand the full extent of the damage. To accelerate the process, I've asked the Federal Aviation Administration to work today with Louisiana and Mississippi electric companies to authorize the use of surveillance drones to assess Ida's damage to energy infrastructure, while ensuring those flights do not disrupt aerial search and rescue operation.
President Biden also declared a major disaster in the state, ordering federal assistance to bolster recovery efforts. The White House in a statement said that the Federal Emergency Management Administration sent 3,600 of its personnel and 3.4 million meals to the storm-devastated area. Hurricane Ida killed at least 2 people in Louisiana, with authorities fearing more deaths as rescue operations are underway. The National Guard has dispatched thousands of personnel as well as vehicles that can navigate flooded roads, boats and 34 helicopters to rescue people stranded by floodwaters, while power outages continue to pose a significant challenge for rescue workers. Hurricane Ida pounded Louisiana on 29 August after sweeping ashore from the Gulf of Mexico, flooding wide areas under heavy surf and torrential rains. Fierce winds toppled trees and power lines, and this plunged New Orleans into darkness after nightfall. As Hurricane Ida made landfall as an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm, those who did not flee were forced to evacuate. Just 3 days after emerging as a tropical storm in the Caribbean Sea, Ida had swelled into a Category 4 hurricane on the 5-step Saffir-Simpson scale, with top sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, according to officials. The storm's approach forced the suspension of emergency medical services in New Orleans and elsewhere across the state, already reeling from a 4th wave of COVID-19 infections that has strained Louisiana's healthcare system. Hundreds of miles of new levees were built around New Orleans after the devastation of Katrina, which made landfall 16 years ago, killing more than 1,800 people. Hurricane Ida came alongside Tropical Storm Nora in Mexico's Puerto Vallarta on 29 August after torrential rains and heavy winds caused a resort building to partially collapse, killing 1 boy. The weather has turned awry. Climate change is battering humanity like never before. It is fueling deadly weather across the globe, including stronger and more damaging hurricanes, giving strict warnings to the humankind, prompting us to take substantial steps to save the future. World Today Desk, DD India.
And let's now take a look at updates on the COVID-19 front from across the world. Well over 21 crore 80 lakh people across the world have been infected by COVID-19 virus so far, while the number of recoveries stands above 19 crore 46 lakh globally. More than 45 lakh 22,000 people have lost their lives to the virus worldwide. The US continues to remain the worst hit of all the countries with over 3 crore 99 lakh and the number of deaths stand above 6 lakh 56,000. In an update on COVID-19 from Bangladesh, the country will be able to vaccinate the targeted 80% of its over 160 million population by the next year. The country is expecting the receipt of the required number of vaccines from various sources to help it launch an accelerated inoculation campaign. The Director General of Health Services, Dr. Abul Bashar Khurshid Alam, said that Bangladesh has already reached or finalized deals with various sources to procure vaccines to inoculate 130 million people. He said Bangladesh was set to purchase nearly 140 million doses of vaccine by June next year. Bashar said that currently around 5 lakh people are being vaccinated on a daily basis. Bangladesh now has the infrastructure to vaccinate 10 million people per month. Bangladesh is also collecting a significant amount of vaccines under the COVAX facility of the WHO. So far, Bangladesh has collected 30 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from various sources. Meanwhile, more than 18.28 million people have received the first dose of the vaccine and 7.84 million people have received both the doses of the vaccine till Sunday. The European Union governments agreed on Monday to remove the United States from the EU's safe travel list, meaning that the US visitors and those from 5 other countries are likely to face tighter controls such as COVID-19 tests and quarantines. Israel, Kosovo, Lebanon, Montenegro, North Macedonia have also been taken off. The list seeks to unify travel rules across the bloc, although it does not bind individual EU nations which are free to determine their own border policies. Already some EU countries such as Germany and Belgium categorize the United States as red, requiring tests and quarantines, while for neighbors France and Netherlands, the United States is classified as safe. The list is largely compiled on the basis of COVID-19 situation in each country, with reciprocity also as a factor. Average daily US COVID-19 cases have risen to more than 450 per million people in the week, compared with the below 40 in mid-June when the European Union added the United States to its list. Figures from Our World in Data show cases related to Israel, Kosovo and Montenegro are even higher, the data shows. Meanwhile, with the US being the worst hit country by the pandemic, school-based vaccine clinics rolled out on Monday in Los Angeles to vaccinate school employees and students aged over 12 and older against COVID-19. The clinics offered Pfizer vaccine, which is approved for children over 12 years of age. Mobile vaccination teams will visit every middle and high school campus in the Los Angeles Unified School District to deliver first and second doses. Earlier in August, California became the first U.S. state to require that its teachers and other school staff be vaccinated or regularly tested for COVID-19. Well, with bottles of sanitizers, temperature checks and wide open windows, a new school year with in-person classes began on Monday for millions of children in Mexico. Parents prepared their children with face masks, sanitizers and plastic face shields so that they could return to the safety of their classrooms. Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said that in-person classes would be voluntary. The new school year begins at a time when Mexico is in the midst of its third wave of COVID-19 infections and has recorded more than 380,000 COVID-19 confirmed deaths. About 64% of its adult population has received at least one dose of vaccine. However, very few children are vaccinated. Health authorities reported nearly 29,000 daily new cases mid-August. That's Mexico's highest for any day except for statistical one-offs. Mexico also recorded 940 more confirmed deaths, the highest number in a single day since February. With COVID cases surging around the world, Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, has reported 1,164 new locally acquired coronavirus cases in the 24-hour period to Monday evening. The number is down slightly on record near 1,300 cases reported one day earlier, as some states struggle to contain a surge in the highly infectious Delta variant, with officials urging citizens to get vaccinated. Victoria, which has been in lockdown for 5 weeks, has reported 76 new locally acquired coronavirus cases in the past 24 hours, up marginally from 73 cases reported the previous day. Australia has recorded nearly 54,000 COVID-19 cases and 1,006 deaths since the pandemic began. And New Zealand's government on Tuesday reported that new COVID-19 cases fell for the second day, down to 49 amid the tight lockdown the country undertook during the latest outbreak this month. The total number of cases in the outbreak is 612, with 597 in New Zealand's largest city of Auckland and 15 in the capital Wellington. Around 1.7 million Aucklanders will remain in strict level 4 lockdown for another 2 weeks, while restrictions for the remainder of the country will ease slightly from tomorrow. Schools, offices and public venues will still remain closed across the country, but businesses will be allowed to operate contactless services. And let's now take a look at what else is happening in the world in our segment News at a Glance.
In Brazil, more than 20 heavily armed robbers on Monday hit several banks in Aracatuba using locals as human shields, leaving a trail of explosive devices and shooting at police. At least 3 people were killed in the assault. The attackers used drones to monitor the streets as they entered the city, hit the banks and made their getaway. Brazil has a long history of bank heists, and major lenders have struggled with a wave of violent robberies in recent years. A collision of 2 river boats in the Amazon in Peru has left at least 20 passengers dead and others missing. The accident took place on the Huallaga River in Miuna when a boat full of passengers crashed into a freight barge amid dense mist at dawn. The passengers were returning to Yurimagua city after participating in a vigil in a secluded hamlet in the jungle known as Santa Maria. US climate envoy John Kerry held talks in Tokyo on August 31st with Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga and other ministers on cooperation on carbon emissions and cutting support for fossil fuels ahead of a trip to China tonight. The former Secretary of State has led US efforts to convince the global community of the threat of the climate change and urged the acceleration of efforts to curb carbon emissions. The US push comes in advance of the UN COP26 climate conference, which will be held in Scotland later this year. Japan is the only G7 country building coal-fired power station as it struggles with the aftermath of the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which led to the shutdown of most of the country's reactors. World Today Desk, DD India.
And let's now get started with the updates from the Tokyo Paralympics. Well, Indian shooter Singraj Adana finished with a bronze medal in the P1 men's 10-meter air pistol SH1 final at the Tokyo Paralympics. China's Chao Yang and Xing Huang won gold and silver respectively. Singraj's total score in the final was 216.8, which saw him finish in the third position to add to India's medal tally. Singraj had scored 569 points to finish sixth in the 60-shot qualifying cycle. The bronze medal now takes India's total medal tally at the ongoing Paralympic Games to 8. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated Singraj Adana for winning bronze medal in the Tokyo Paralympic Games. In a tweet today, the Prime Minister said that exceptional performance by Singraj Adana, India's talented shooter, brings home the coveted bronze medal. He has worked tremendously hard and achieved remarkable successes. Congratulations to him and best wishes for the endeavors ahead. And Paralympic bronze medal winner Singraj dedicated his medal to the nation. He further said he's thankful to his coach, the Sports Authority of India and the Paralympic Committee of India.
साथियों, मैंने आप लोगों के प्यार की बदौलत अपने परिवार के आशीर्वाद और सहयोग और बंसी वाले की कृपा से आज मैं कामयाब हो गया हूँ पैरालंपिक में ब्राउन मेडल लेने के लिए। इसमें आप सबका ही मैं एहसानमंद हूँ, अपने टीम का, अपने कोचेज का और अपने पीसीआई का और साई का, जिन स्पोर्ट्स नीति के बदौलत हम यहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं। मैं आप सबको हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देना चाहता हूँ। ये जीत मेरी नहीं है बल्कि आप सबकी जीत है। भारत माता की जय।
And Singraj Adana's family celebrated at their home in Faridabad after he won a bronze medal at the Tokyo Paralympics. So this is Adaraj's family in Faridabad celebrating his success at the Tokyo Paralympics. And soon after Singraj
मैं तो बड़ा खुश हूँ आपकी वजह से, बच्चों की वजह से मुझे मेरे लड़के ने कम से कम मेडल तो लिया है और आने वाले समय में भी जो 50 मीटर रह रहा है, मैं कामना करता हूँ वो कम से कम गोल्ड मेडल लेगा।
हाँ, मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है मेडल को देख के और उनकी जो मेहनत है वो सफल हुई। तो अभी उनका एक और इवेंट रह रहा है तो उसमें हमें गोल्ड की उम्मीद है।
आज इस खुशखबरी को मैं बयान नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ कि आज हमारे भाई ने सिर्फ हमारा घर का परिवार का नाम नहीं, पूरे समाज का नहीं, इस देश का नाम विश्व स्तर पर किया है।
And soon after Singraj Adana added yet another medal to India's kitty, wishes started pouring in from all corners. Para-athlete Pramod Bhagat tweeted, and I quote, congratulations Singraj for the bronze medal in shooting. Indian medal tally moves ahead for the third straight day. Amazing. Badminton star Saina Nehwal also extended her best wishes. In a tweet, she said, congratulations to Singraj Adana for winning the bronze medal in shooting. And cricketer Dinesh Karthik also posted congratulatory wishes. In a tweet, he said, Congratulations Singraj Adana for bagging the bronze. Happy to see Team India doing so well at the Paralympics. And let's now take a look at what else happened in Tokyo in the Tokyo Paralympics on day 7.
In table tennis, the Indian duo of Bhavina Patel and Sonal Patel loses 2-11, 4-11, 2-11 against China's Yang Zhou and Biang Zhang in women's team classes 4-5 quarterfinals. In athletics, Simran Sharma failed to enter the finals. Simran finished 5th in the 100-meter T13 round 1 heat 2 with the season best timing of 12.69 seconds in her debut Paralympic. Bhagyashree Jadhav finished in 7th place in women's shot put F34 category. She has given her personal best performance of 7 meter at Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, beating her own previous distance by a huge margin. Indian challenge in the compound men's open archery ended after Rakesh Kumar lost to former world champion in a tight quarterfinal battle at Paralympic Games. In shooting, Rubina Francis finished 7th in the women's 10-meter air pistol SH1 final. Rubina had 128.1 points when she was eliminated. Sports Desk, DD India.
And the medal hauls at both this year's Olympics and the ongoing Paralympics Games in Tokyo are now India's best ever tallies at the world's most competitive sporting event. These results have not been delivered overnight. They are results of a continuous hard work of not only the sports persons, their coaches and sporting staff, but also entire sports administration as well as the government at multiple fronts. Target Olympic Podium Scheme TOPS is one such effort. Here's a report.
With recording its best ever performance in Tokyo Olympics, Team India is now creating new records in the ongoing Tokyo Paralympics 2020 as well. The Indian contingent has already broken the record of Rio Paralympics 2016 with bagging a total number of 7 medals till date in the ongoing Paralympics event. India bagged a total of 4 medals in Rio Paralympics, which has been comfortably surpassed at the ongoing event. Achieving the current feat was not at all easy for the Indian contingent, however. Consistent support kept them striding forward with grit and determination. One such scheme that plays a vital role in the development of athletes is the Target Olympic Podium Scheme or TOPS. To improve India's performance in the Olympic and Paralympic Games, the Sports Ministry launched the Target Olympic Podium Scheme in September 2014. Under the TOPS scheme, players who are in the core group are given 50,000 rupees as monthly allowance, whereas players who are in the development group are given an amount of 25,000 rupees as monthly allowance. Currently, there are 162 athletes in the core group, whereas 254 athletes along with the hockey team have been included in the development group. The scheme helps the players to streamline their coaching requirements and other equipments meant for their training purpose. In addition to this, financial assistance is also given to players who are participating in Olympic and Paralympic Games. The scheme not only facilitates players with financial help, but also helps them with the availability of support staff such as physiotherapists and physical trainers to maintain their fitness for various events. If we look at the figures under the top scheme, the government spent rupees 14.31 crore in 2018-2019, rupees 12.41 crore in 2019-20, rupees 15.65 crore in 2020-2021 and rupees 12.48 crore has been spent in 2021-22 till August 4th.
हमने 5-6 वर्षों में कुछ करने का प्रयास किया है, टॉप जैसी स्कीम को चलाया है, एलीट एथलीट को देश विदेश में ट्रेनिंग दी है, बहुत सारे एथलीट्स को तो 300, 400 दिन विदेशों में ट्रेनिंग मिली, 1,000 दिन देश के अंदर ट्रेनिंग मिली. So training any athlete for 400 days overseas or 1,000 days within the country is not an easy task, but the government of India is handholding, the SAI is handholding the athletes and will keep doing so.
The support what we are getting from SAI, ministry, see, it's a collective effort, as I said. As coach, definitely he is putting a lot of effort on Shaili, and he is giving precise training for her, and he is giving target each day and for each training, and she is able to cope up with that. See, this is it's a rolling kind of thing.
Apart from this, the government has also formed Mission Olympic Cell that works under the Sports Authority of India. The role of this cell is to identify and support the athletes selected under the top scheme. The idea of the Mission Olympic Cell is to debate, discuss and decide the processes and methods so that the athlete receives best assistance. The Mission Olympic Cell also focuses on selection, exclusion and retention of athletes, coaches, training institutes that can receive TOPS assistance. With such schemes, the government is working at the grassroots level to identify talents and help them develop in the sporting landscape. The improved medal tally at Tokyo Olympics with record 7 medals and the ongoing performance of Tokyo Paralympics is a result reflecting the support and strategy put behind the athletes through these schemes by the government. Sports Desk, DD India.
Sarah's gold medal turned out to be the start of a great day, at the end of which India had 5 medals in its kitty, taking its total tally to 7, which now stands to 8 as of now. It's the best ever haul at the Paralympic Games. The previous best was 4 in Rio. The icing on the cake was the gold won by javelin thrower Sumit Antil, who broke the world record in his category not once but twice, but not twice but thrice, so to speak, to spare the top of the podium. Take a look.
Sumit Antil won gold in the men's javelin F64 at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics with a new world record throw of 68.55 meters. Sumit Antil smashed the world record not once, not twice, but thrice during the final in Tokyo. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Sumit Antil, who broke the world record in his category to win gold in javelin throw at the ongoing Tokyo Paralympics.
Thank you so much, sir. जी सर जी सर थैंक यू सो मच सर थैंक यू सो मच सर जी सर जी सर थैंक यू सो मच सर
The day started with a gold medal for Avni Lekhara. The 19-year-old became the first woman from India to win a Paralympics gold medal. Avni finished with a Paralympic record and in process equaled the world record with 249.6 points. The 19-year-old has been wheelchair-bound since a road accident in 2012. Under the government supervision, she receives the national coaching camps with sports science support along with sports kit and financial assistance towards installation of computerized digital target for rifle shooting at home, air rifle, ammunition and accessories. After gold, India witnessed silver glory as Yogesh Kuthunia bagged silver medal in men's discus throw F56 event. Yogesh registered his season's best attempt of 44.38 in the men's F56 final. He threw 44.38 in his 6th and final attempt to take up the top spot before Claudine Batista of Brazil fired 44.57 in his first attempt to dethrone the Indian athlete. The 24-year-old sent the disc to a best distance of 44.38 meters in his 6th and last attempt to clinch the silver. Under the government supervision, he receives the national coaching camps with sports science support along with sports kit. The third medal and also his hat-trick medal at the Paralympics came from Devendra Jhajaria, who won a silver medal in men's javelin throw F46 event. Jhajaria grabbed silver with a personal best throw of 64.35. This was also his hat-trick medal at Paralympic Games. Padma Shri awardee scripted his name in the pages of history when he won the gold at 2004 Paralympics in Athens. Devendra broke his own record with a throw of 63.97 meters at the Rio Paralympics. Under the government supervision, he receives the national coaching camps with sports science support along with sports kit. And it was then a bronze medal captured by Sundar Singh Gurjar with a season's best throw of 62.58 in the same event. Sundar went first among the Indian trio in the final as he started with the season's best of 62.58. Sundar Singh Gurjar was born in a small village called Karole in Rajasthan. During the Rio Paralympics 2016, he was unable to present himself at the call room on time, following which he was disqualified. Sundar was awarded the Arjuna Award in the year 2019. Under the government supervision, he receives the national coaching camps with sports science support along with sports kit. He receives financial assistance in procurement of prostheses and equipment, along with the grant of coach fees. Sports Desk, DD India.
And time now for segment Beyond the Headlines. These are stories that make news but not headlines.
Hundreds of colorful drones performed a light show in the night sky above Athens. The show took place in the Greek capital Stavros Niarchos Cultural Center, where the National Opera and Library are located. According to organizers, nearly 200 drones lit up the sky in a synchronized display, which swept through the night, changing colors and shapes alongside a musical backing track. Thousands of cows made the hour-long exodus from high up in the Swiss Alps down to lower pastures in a traditional descent that marks the end of the herd's summer sojourn. About 50 farmers rang bells in the wee hours to guide 1,200 cattle down the alpine mountain pass of Clausen Pass, rising 1,950 meters above sea level. The cows have spent 7 weeks high up in the Alps before the trip, which lasts about 5 hours. Hundreds of redheads from around the world gathered at a festival in the southern Dutch town of Tilburg to attend the annual Redhead Days event. The event brought visitors from countries that include Britain, Germany, Hungary, and the US to a series of meet and greet events and activities, including a life drawing class. In Japan, a 19-year-old student and artist, Monami Ono, is turning card boxes into artwork. 10 years ago, she picked up a cardboard box for a homework assignment and made what she described was a bike-like thing. Years after, she has gained a reputation. Now her work has been displayed in galleries at home in Japan and overseas. The artist is now relying on custom sculptures that she is commissioned to produce as a source of income. The mulberry paper making, a Chinese national intangible cultural heritage, raised residents' income in a village of northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. In the village, there are many mulberry paper making workshops where the crafts are on display and products on sale, such as cap stretcher, shoe pad, and fan with flower patterns. During the tourist season, visitors from all over the country come to experience the process of making mulberry paper and take it home as a gift. A birthday party was held at a zoo in Guangzhou city of South China's Guangdong province for 2 pandas, attracting hordes of visitors to share in the festive cheer. The 2 pandas, named Yayi and Xingyi, who turned 8 this year, celebrated their birthday with 2 delicious cakes prepared by the staff members of the Guangzhou Zoo. With a watermelon as the base, the cake was topped with fruits, while the bamboo was quickly eaten up by the adorable pandas after they were served. Amid a worsening fuel crisis in Lebanon and increasing power blackouts, Lebanese citizen Mohammed Chihab found relief in installing solar power supply at his home to provide him and his family with round-the-clock electricity. The renewable energy solution, although not new to Lebanon or the world, has become more popular here in recent months, despite a deepening economic and financial crisis that has hit the small Middle Eastern country. A new women-only taxi company has opened in Al Ahsa in Saudi Arabia. The company employs about 500 women drivers. Women's taxis mainly ply from Al Ahsa to other cities in the eastern province and to the capital Riyadh. Although there are online taxis and isolated city taxi services run by women in Saudi Arabia, this is the first time that a taxi company has been set up that employs only female drivers. World Today Desk, DD India.
And let's now take a look into what happened on this day in history.
On this day in 1907, the Anglo-Russian Convention was signed in St. Petersburg, settling differences between Britain and Russia over Persia, Afghanistan and Tibet. On this day in 1969, Rocky Marciano, the American former world heavy boxing champion, was killed in an air crash in Iowa. Britain's Princess Anne and her husband, Captain Mark Phillips, separated after 16 years of marriage on this day in 1989. East and West Germany signed a treaty to harmonize their legal and political systems after merging on October 3rd on this day in 1990. On this day in 1997, Britain's Princess Diana and her companion, Dodi Al-Fayed, were killed in a car crash in Paris. On this day in 2002, Lionel Hampton, one of America's jazz legends, died aged 94. He pioneered and popularized the vibraphone and teamed up with a long list of jazz greats over a musical career that spanned 6 decades. On this day in 2003, world's longest television makes its debut at Hong Kong's Shaitan Racetrack. The Polish-born scientist Joseph Rotblat, who worked on the atomic bomb but went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize as a leading campaigner against the nuclear weapons, died aged 96 on this day in 2005. On this day in 2006, Norwegian police recovered Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream, 2 years after the masterpiece was stolen by gunmen from a museum in Oslo. On this day in 2016, Brazil's Senate removes President Dilma Rousseff from office.
And that's it then in World Today. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.